Well, hey there, I'm Stevie Morrison and this is Lisa and Lisa. There's been a lot of transfer gossip going on the last couple of podcasts. What about you?
What about me?
Yeah, you on a boat?
I'm not on... I don't even know how to answer that question. I mean, I do love sailing. I love going sailing on any boats. But right now I'm behind the mic with you. And where else would I rather be?
Well, fair enough. That is a good thing. And I think for this podcast, we want to have a little look at the calendar, because one thing you do get to do that's different to me, you get to travel the world, follow the tour, which is pretty cool. And there's some fairly exciting new venues on this year's calendar. So it'll be pretty cool to look at that. I think, those venues will be pretty exciting to chat about.
It's pretty stacked. 14 events, a couple of new ones, and a couple of places that I get to revisit, which I'm really excited for. One new one will be Auckland for SailGP. I think that will be absolutely epic. I think the New Zealand sailing community, that they will get behind the event. Obviously, the team has done really well, and everyone will want to be out there to cheer them on.
We're not going to mention dolphins, are we?
We're in Auckland.
Oh.
New venue.
Okay, thank you.
We're just going to have plenty of boats out on the water. I think that we'll be lining the race course, which will be pretty cool. Rio is one I'm super excited for. Pretty special to me back in the 2016 Olympics. I think that venue is just
because she was trying to be all humble there. I think it's important to remember she actually got an Olympic silver medal in the Rio 2016 Olympics as well. So that's why it's pretty special.
That's why I like the venue. But I think it's just such an iconic backdrop. It's such a intricate race course with all the mountains, the geography. There's just, it's a difficult place to sail, which is quite exciting as a racer. I think that that's going to be quite a fun racetrack, and the backdrop is pretty incredible. And I'll come to the UK. You must be excited about that one.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think, the events we've had in Great Britain have always been well backed. And I think what I do enjoy with SailGP, like Cadiz, for example, I love the Cadiz event. You see all the fans on the side there. It looks almost more like a football event than a traditional sailing event. And I hope that in Great Britain we can do that. I'm from Devon, so the last time we were here, it was down in Plymouth. I don't actually know where it is, which is, I guess that will come out soon. But I loved it at Plymouth. We were there in Cowes. We've been, we've seen some great venues. I mean, I wonder about somewhere like Brighton, just down from London on the seafront there, massive beach venue. So yeah, there's a lot of really interesting venues.
And of course, we're going back to Sydney. Can't beat Sydney. Yeah. I think that's the original. It'll probably be the 6th time we've actually been to Sydney for SailGP, because we had that.
Oh, the COVID one.
The COVID year.
Yes.
So I don't know. It always delivers. I always promise wind there. So I mean, it's high pressure to get another one. But
yeah, well, I don't know if it's just because I'm a skiff sailor, but I do think that Sydney Harbour is the iconic sailing venue of the world for me. If we can get a nice nor'easter coming down the harbour, then I do think that is pretty much picture perfect sailing conditions there,
You put the pressure on me to deliver wind in Sydney. Are you going to deliver wind in the UK?
Yeah, well, wind and probably rain, unfortunately, but that's a
fine for you in the commentary booth, not so great for me out on the water.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay,
there you go. It's got to be a win once for being in the commentary booth. But I think the one that's interesting for me that I think could be beautiful, and I worry there won't be a lot of wind, but I know there can be, is Geneva.
Yeah,
I think
incredible.
It's kind of cool that we're going to go into the middle of mainland Europe. It's an absolutely stunning venue, to look at, sailing-wise. And if we get breeze, I think it could be one of the great events, because I imagine we'll be right off the city front there. Fresh water brings a different challenge. I suppose that's one thing that's interesting. There's quite different venues, and I wonder who they're going to suit or not suit. I feel like that's a bit of an interesting thing in it. So Geneva excites me, and then I'm really intrigued. Quite in the early to middle part of the season, we go to LA, and then I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I guess they have big trucks in the States and stuff like that. They can move stuff.
Just sail them up the coast.
1 week later. I mean, blimey, you wouldn't be on the shore crew for that one. 1 week later, we're going to be racing in San Fran.
Yeah, LA, San Fran back to back will be cool. And momentum is also super, super critical. But, I mean, we've also seen some collisions and repairs, so you don't want to have any little tussles too close at one event and not have your boat in one piece for the next one. So
do you think that the momentum does work like that in sailing enough, that if you have had that good, you've won on Sunday, you're buzzing, and then you're straight into it and that momentum's going to carry on, or are you likely to kind of, I don't know, potentially over-enjoy Sunday? And
depends who you are. I think it will help. I think being back to back and just that close together, because we haven't seen anything really close together for about 3 weeks maybe. So I think it'll be good. The only thing is that they're very different venues. LA is really flat because we're inside the port. We had a bit of an interesting weather system there last year, but super flat venue, pretty good to full send. Then you go to San Fran, which is bumpy, it'll be cold, it'll be windy. So they're different events. So maybe momentum isn't really key, but being able to be the master of all conditions, ultimately across 14 events that are super different venues, it's going to be the real challenge this year. So, I mean, we've been talking about who's who and who's going to win and what's going to happen, but you got to be good at everything.
You do, yeah. And I mean, going to go to a new venue in Germany, Sassnitz, and I hope that's the right way to say it. But Germany's one of the big sailing fans and backgrounds of the sport, and I think that could get a huge crowd there, a different place to sail. But I feel like that'll be the first time that we're going to really start to feel the pressure on this German team. They were new last season. I felt they did a good job. I felt actually they came in and did a pretty good job for season 4. But there was an awful lot of chat of we're growing, we're building, we're going to build, we're going to be better for next season and then judge us on next season. Well, here we are, season 5. They have kept the crew roster the same as far as I can see. And is it now pressure on? Is it time? Can they? Are they good enough? Have they got the experience? Have they got that kind of golden ability to go out and win things?
I mean, this episode, we're going to talk about those 3 teams that were at the bottom of the leaderboard. So we do want to talk about Germany and the 2 new teams. But before we do, there was one thing that was different. And we had a training camp in Bermuda where a couple of teams were able to get on the water and get training time, which has been the thing that they've all been asking for. And the German team were one of those teams. How do you think that's going to play into it? Obviously, hitting the ground running as a new team is hard, but to have training time where you can just work on basic skills with no other boats around, it's going to really help them.
It should be. I mean, it should be absolute gold because that have those hours, no one around, no one to rush your manoeuvres. You can be quite specific. I want to work on this, and set out a really clear training structure for the day. No one to get in the way of you working on those things. And I think that if they've used it well, it should help. But of course, there was a little bit of unscripted drama out there, wasn't there, when we think of it, if we think of the action that happened out there. And of course, we had a wing come down again, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was so. I think the German team, they definitely got affected with that training time, but it was Brazil who were out there on the water. It was not their fault from what we understand. But yeah, the wing collapse, obviously, back last season was really scary for everyone. And I know that the SailGP Technologies are looking into why the wing collapsed again, cut training time for the Brazil team. And I mean, it must have been pretty hard for Martin, who's coming in as a new driver and wants to get the training time, to have that happen. I think we saw that rattle the Kiwi team. Pete and Blair were very vocal about how that affected them. So I wonder, I mean, she doesn't seem someone that would get phased very easily, but something like that on your first couple of days on the water would be pretty scary.
Yeah, but what an opportunity for those teams. And I know the US got a lot of good time, and we'll come on to the US in a bit. But yeah, I think Germany didn't quite get the time they wanted. But again, it was another sign to me that they're making all the right moves. They're thinking about things right. They know they need the training. They know they need the structure. They'll be working on things very, very efficient in how they're going about their program. And they've got in the wing trimmer, they've got Olympic gold with Stuart Biffle. Eric's been there and performed at this top level. A couple of Olympic bronze medals. But last year they only won 1 race all season. They never made a final. I don't know. I just feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure coming on that team really, really quick. And maybe that's going to be the theme of this episode, and maybe we're going to not be super popular again. Perhaps that's the theme of our life. But is that these teams have got the weight on them, haven't they? Because they are in the bottom half, and there is no relegation from the league. But everyone's job's not secure, and there's pressure on people to deliver out there. And I do think for this German team, they've made all the right moves to this point. But how do you make that jump to challenging at the front of the fleet?
To me, looking at the German team, I think they do have a really good team environment. I think the way that they approach things, as you said, is very structured. It was really hard for them to miss the training time. I know that they were really looking forward to that, as you would be. But I mean, Eric is such an interesting leader. He's had success. I think having both Stuart and James Wisbowski as kind of the other 2 that he has to work really closely with has been a good move. Obviously, as a new driver or someone new to SailGP, it's hard to learn I mean, you've got so many variables coming at you with the other boats, the format of racing. It's very different to what you might see in Olympic sailing, or, match racing is probably the closest to it. But I think by having a stable platform with the people around you making your life a little bit easier, it helps you adapt to racing. And I mean, I was quite impressed of how they made the jump into the league better than other new teams that we've seen or other new drivers. And I actually think we're going to see them more up in the mix. Their starting was so good, second half of the season. They were, I mean, when they got it right, it was very good, and that's something that's very difficult to do. Even the best teams get it wrong sometimes. So I'd be quite interested to see how their off-season has gone. I think they've got resource, they've got a really nice team environment, which looks like they're very humble, they're happy to learn, they're very open-minded. So I think we will see them mix it with the teams we spoke about in the last episode. But one team that I'm really not sure, they were in Bermuda, they got good training time, is USA. And I think it's a very different mindset to the Germans. They come in, they've got a lot of confidence. That has shifted throughout, coming in hot with Abu Dhabi doing well and then struggling at different events. Their capsize in Bermuda obviously shook them a lot. And, their tone has shifted on and off. But ultimately, they definitely think that they can win. But I don't know if they've got the right formula at the moment to really make that jump. I mean, I've heard that they're changing their flight controller, which, if they go to an experienced flight controller, that can help them with the platform. But I don't know. I just don't see. It depends what they did in Bermuda, I guess, at their training camp.
Yeah, well, the training is kind of key, isn't it? And I think certainly for the German team, I think the big thing for them is racing. And I think if you think of one of the sort of, one of the more heart-in-the-mouth moments of last season was in Sydney, and the Germans misjudging the top gate and Eric having to bail out, not hit the mark, and it was just carnage as they went in there. And that was a little bit I felt in that moment Eric was perhaps slightly rabbit in the headlights. Last episode I alluded to the steering wheel on these F50s and how there's a lot going on for the drivers to think about more than just sailing. And I felt like there he was a little bit frozen in the moment. And so I think he kind of processed a lot in the off-season. And the interesting thing, like you say, when you come to the US team is, to be perfectly frank, I think they made a massive error by getting everyone off the boat and then coming in with a completely new team that had no F50 experience. I think that was, I just think it was a mistake. They'll have their reasons and they had whatever it was. But, you think, well, what happens if we took Tom Slingsby out from the Australian boat and put Taylor in with that Australian team? How does he do, for example? I think probably pretty well. I agree. And not disrespect to the other sailors on the US boat. I think likewise, if you took Kyle out of the Australian boat and put Jeremy in on that one, probably again okay. I think if you sort of put in one or two maybe new people to the lineup on the boat, it's perhaps not going to make all the difference in the world. But to take everyone out, so everyone's learning on the job, you don't know
who's making the mistakes
yes.
or where the chink in the armor is.
Yeah.
And I think it's about realizing that you don't know it all, and to be able to upskill, you need people around you that know what they're doing. They can say, this feels right, this feels wrong, maybe try this. Obviously, our coaches are sitting onshore in a booth that are looking at data, and you can maybe give information. Yeah,
and don't underestimate that. I mean, they had Philippe Presti was the coach, and he suddenly was
very
gone.
Successful.
And I know we haven't talked a lot about the coaches, but coaches make a big difference. Well, I hope they do. It's my job half the time. but coaches can make a big difference and bring that experience. And they and that was somewhere where they did it. And now, they've made an awful lot of good moves. Don't get me wrong. They seem to be one of the more successful franchises corporately, and they've got some great sponsors coming in, and they've been doing a lot of the right things. You see them at like Red Bull fitness training camps. They were in Bermuda. They got the most time on the water there. But I think they're going to be the team, and I think they've brought it on themselves a little bit. And I don't have a problem with it, because you don't want people turning up being too humble all the time. You want people turning up and saying, we want to win.
Yeah, of course.
That's why we're here. They're winners and want to go out and be winners, but I kind of feel like they all are. I feel like they're going to have the most pressure and eyes on them early, and there's a lot of pressure on that crew.
I think it's quite interesting. Obviously, you're talking about the mindset of the US and coming in saying, I want to win. But I mean, Eric is the same. He has a different attitude, but he hates coming off the water and making mistakes. And I see him in the mix zone. He's like, I made this mistake and this mistake. It's so frustrating. He wants to be at the front as well. But the way that he approaches it and their team environment is very different. No one is right or wrong, but I think this season will be very telling on, who is able to look inside their team and say, we need to make these changes to improve. I mean, neither of them want to be at the bottom of the leaderboard. Nobody wants to be down there, but I think it's the way that they approach the team environment and improve that's going to tell us what approach might be better in this environment. But yeah, US team, super interesting. I think just them across the season will be quite difficult. You said that it's not so good to gut a team and start over, but the other team that was at the bottom of the leaderboard, the Swiss team, that's exactly what they've done for this season, bar Seb.
That's true, yeah. I mean, they really have done that. And of course, did we talk about the potential rumour with the US team? Because, I mean, they lost, at the end of season 3, they lost Hans Henken to go off and do his Olympic campaign. Well, he won an Olympic bronze medal. Ian Burrow and him got Olympics bronze in the 49er class. Olympic gold, there was Diego and Florian. Pete and Blair, Olympic gold in the 49er. Eric, 49er Olympic medal.
You just love the 49er because you sailed it.
It's just a common thread, Lisa. But all I'm saying is, there's Ian Burrow and Hans Henken.
I wonder, some good US sailors.
Yeah, and Hans was on the boat. I mean, do you go to someone like him? Does that start to fill that gap of not having the F50 SailGP racing experience? I mean, poor old Hans, the last time I remember seeing him was that horrendous moment in Taranto, which was one of the scariest things I've sort of seen on the telly, really. I mean, thankfully he's all good and what an amazing achievement. Yeah, so sick, isn't it? Amazing that he's done that. But I wonder, does he come back? How do they work with that roster and get it? Because, yeah, I mean, I love the loyalty of the team and I love that that unity, but it is getting the experience, and it is then, we've got the franchise, we've got the backers, we've got Lindsey Vonn coming down, we've got all these things happening, and the big Tommy Hill figure, I think it is, and Red Bull, and it's epic. It's so exciting for them and for the league to have that kind of interest, but with that brings its own pressure, and I just feel that they need to hit the ground running because they did make the most of their Bermuda time. But no, you're right as well. That the exact opposite, Switzerland, who basically, we didn't really have time on the first podcast with the transfer teams, did we? Because I think they've basically changed everyone, haven't they?
Pretty much. I mean, no one in San Fran is basically on that boat for the start of season 5. Seb's coming back after his Olympic campaign in the 49er class, which is a very successful class. But then they're looking at the Alinghi America's Cup team, Alinghi Red Bull. They're bringing Arno Sarafagis, who... Yeah,
I'm not too happy about that one from a commentary point of view for Switzerland. Sarafagis coming out quickly. He's got potential, hasn't it? Anyway, there we go.
That's your biggest challenge.
No, there you go. We've all got our things to work on over the year ahead.
Other people have to actually get off the start line with 11 other F50s, but but yeah, we've got Arno coming in. I think Brian Metro, Maud Jayette also was an Olympic sailor, so she wasn't involved in the cup, but as a strategist. They're bringing in some different grinding team. I think Matt Gottrell from the British team.
Yeah, Stu Dodson.
From the Spanish. So, they're really mixing it up. So continuity is so important. We keep talking about the team, but if something's not working, when do you need to shake it up? And I mean, they obviously don't want to come last. I don't know those personalities well enough. You've obviously got some good Swiss sailors and then a few people that are coming from experienced teams. So how they manage that through their coaching staff and their leadership will be quite interesting to watch how they develop. I mean, I'm really excited to see that, but I just don't know how it'll really play out. I don't know if you have any more insights than that.
Well, I think what my insight on it would be that I believe in getting those big grinders on, that is an awesome decision, because I think they perhaps lack that horsepower at the front of the boat to be able to be adaptive enough and trim the boat aggressively enough.
I guess they could do that because by bringing the Swiss sailors on in the flight controller wing trimmer position, then they were able to bring in the other nationals, because there's still a nationality rule within SailGP. As you develop as a new team, you've got to have more nationals. So by able to invest in, Swiss sailors in those key positions, they can bring in some power.
Yeah, no, they've got some serious power in the front. I mean, Matt Gotcher, Olympic medalist, gold medal. I think that was in Rio, in a rowing boat though.
Still faces backwards,
faces backwards, so he's all good on board that. And Stu Dodson, another contender for the most team caps in SailGP. But Stu's gone through that journey with the Spanish from last all the way to season champions, and of course that's the journey the Swiss will want to find themselves on this season. So I know they've been out headhunting some pretty high level coaches, so that could hopefully bring them quite a bit of positivity to the team. But yeah, I think again, there's excuses in changing your lineup. By changing the lineup, we could easily sit here and say, okay, well, they've got to learn, they've got to develop, they've got to grow. And maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe there's the back in there and the team is going to go on and it doesn't matter what the result is. I don't think most of the people on that boat are tuned that way. But by changing the whole team, we are going to easily be able to find excuses for them. And I just feel, again, that, Seb had not the Olympics he would have liked. He was quite in it till near the end, but he didn't get the result he wanted. So yeah,
I don't know, but even you got Nathan Atteridge coming in with that Swiss team. He had 4 events with them, and he still struggled to get them to the front. Nathan's very talented. He's been racing at the front. He's been able to dive in with different teams, and I think, having someone like that come in and potentially give you advice about your team. He was working with them, being like, was he involved in the conversation saying you need to shake up your lineup? Like, who knows? I'm in full gossip era right now. But some discussions like that must have been going on, being like, what do you think we need to do, Nathan?
Yeah, no, I'm sure they would have had feedback from lots of places, and that's one, that's I guess a good thing. But I think someone in that team needs to get hold of it, needs to lead it. I think that needs to be Seb. And they need to really start to make those improvements. And again, not really seeing them feature enough in the start line. I think they need to do a lot of work on their routing in the pre-start, give that bit of aggressiveness to it. But yeah, I like the signings they've made. I think having that home event in Geneva, I think that'll be a pretty good deal for them.
I mean, it would have been hard with a full lineup change, but I mean, we talked about the last 2 teams. They've been training in Bermuda at the training camp, taking that opportunity. The Swiss probably needed that, but half their lineup was busy at the America's Cup. They probably hadn't signed half of them at the time. So I think that would be difficult. I don't know what to expect out of this team, but I think that they've made good moves. But then when you think about their flight controller, Francois Morvan, obviously had a lot of success with the French team, but that whole Swiss nationality thing, it's going to be really interesting. It's almost like a brand new team.
It is, isn't it? And I wonder where do we sit? Do you start firing people, like, of the drivers? What do you do? I mean, you mentioned Nathan, but should Nathan be back there with this lineup in front of him? Or I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? I guess you've got to give him the chance to run with it. And this is the trouble with when they do change the lineup, that it takes the pressure off in a way, because there's an instant excuse in there. So I think they need to enforce that on themselves and have some quite clear targets for what they're going to do for the year. But the Swiss are in many ways, really hard to know exactly where to put them in the lineup. I think Germany are definitely going to come in. They're going to be solid. I worry if they're going to actually make the big jump. I think USA are going to either have made the big jump and then they've got the kind of bravado and the self-assurance. And I think the set play style racing really can suit Taylor. But if they haven't made the boat handling and the sailing of the boat improvements, they could really be struggling, which I think will be a lot of pressure on them quite quickly. So that we'll see. And then Switzerland, I don't really know where Switzerland sit, but for all those teams, when you hear about, a double gold medalist, Martine Grail, coming in with Lee McMillan, Andy Maloney, Marco Grail, we'll wait to find out who else is going to be on the boat. Oh, Rich Mason, strategist, again, real experienced F50 sailor. That's quite an exciting lineup to come into the league with, and they're going to be free. They've got that free sort of first season vibe, Martine, Brazilian team, bit of samba, bit of free flowing, loose, ready to go into the racing, take it on, see it how it is. And And I think for a new team like Brazil coming in, that's pretty exciting. And they do have no pressure. They can kind of come out and go, right, here we are. Other than, and this is, you know, I do think what an opportunity for Martine, and what a shame it's taken so long for the first female driver to show up. But I guess you can't sort of avoid the issue that there must be an extra pressure just because she is the first ever female driver.
I think it's interesting because so many people want her to succeed because she is the first. I mean, it's a massive moment in time to be able to race against the best in the world, no matter what your gender is. But for a lot of female sailors to see Martine being able to line up on that start line against other great sailors, I think she is such a legend in her own right, and she wants to win so badly. If you've ever chatted to her, she loves winning. She loves the challenge. I think she'll take the pressure upon herself, but no doubt there's that extra level of pressure that she's representing more than just herself and her country, but a lot of female sailors that are backing her. But I think they've made a really smart decision by bringing in some real talent to support her and to help her thrive. And I kind of touched on it in the first episode, but I think for Martine, she needs to have the freedom to learn how to race this style, learn how to drive an F50, and by having the people around her, a really good strategist that knows the racing, Lee, who's done it before, also really fresh with fast boat racing from the Cup, and Andy, who is one of the best flight controllers out there as well. She's given herself a really good opportunity to learn, which is number one. She's going to have to learn how to do this style and then race well. So I'm really excited. I think that they're not, it's very unlikely they're going to be top three at the end of the season. Like, let's be honest, but I think we'll see them. They have the ability to win races and hopefully make a final. I think it will be difficult. We've spoken about all the teams in this league. The level is going up and up, and it's hard to break through. We saw that with the Germans having a good lineup, but I think she's given herself the best chance to succeed. And I mean, in the future, they might need to bring more Brazilians on, but Brazil has a lot of talented sailors as well. So I think first season, they've made some good decisions, but hopefully they can have a good development pathway to get more Brazilians on the boat.
Yeah, well, I guess, you know, it's super exciting, that Brazilian team with all the flair. And I think the most important person in it, really, to offer that experience and bring the sort of learning curve correct to it is Andy Maloney. I mean, massive signing from New Zealand there. And I guess he's going to have had to be pretty well, you know, compensated to move across to that team. But that seems to be the way things are going in SailGP, with people being pretty well rewarded. And his experience is going to be huge. If he can give the right direction and say, OK, Martine, yeah, you've got all that flair. Trust yourself in this part of the course. But when we're coming into the gate or the bottom gate, wherever it is on the course, these are just set play manoeuvres, and you've just got to execute these relentlessly, ruthlessly, and deliver that level of consistency that will hopefully even out her flair. I think then that Brazilian team could be quite a force.
I do think it's really interesting. I mean, I'd love to chat to Andy about why he made the move. We think that, you know, there's some big money getting thrown around between athletes trying to poach them off teams, you know, Australia, New Zealand, the guys at the top. I think that's one thing that's really exciting about the league. But I think with Andy, it's kind of, does this nationality go out, national pride go out the window a little bit? And now these athletes are being able to chase, you know, lucrative opportunities. I mean, obviously it's exciting to be part of a project that is could be really, really big and a big moment in time. But I think for Andy, it's a big move where you've got, not guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed in sport, but you can go out there and win races with your national team, or do you chase the money and go with a new team and see what you can do with that? So it's a bit of a balance, and we won't know Andy's decision unless I get him on my podcast, which I could do.
You're going to say Maloney's money, the next episode of the podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's their careers, you know, it's their careers out there, and they're going to be making good money from it, and they want to make sure they're being well rewarded on their journey. And I think that's probably, you know, I don't think they're selling their soul or anything like that. He'll be, I'm sure, completely believing that with Martine and Lee and the rest of that Brazilian team, that they can kind of go out and get the results to go with it. I mean, you know, they're driven by winning things as well as just, you know, having a good bank balance at the end of the day. So I'm sure that I'm sure there's many reasons for Andy doing it, and yes, I think we should push for that Maloney's Money podcast next time you catch up with him. I think that'll be quite the one. I'm sure Andy would absolutely love to get involved with that.
Well, he's a very talented sailor, so no doubt they chased after him for a reason. But just thinking about that team, I think that we will see them win races, hopefully make a final. Who knows? I think it will be very erratic for that team, but I really hope to see them tussling at the top a few times, and I believe that they can. And I think the other new team that's rumoured.
A bit of Latin. You talk about a bit of flair
Latin
and
flair,
Latin flair in Brazil.
Well, we all know Jimmy Spithill, but
heard of him.
Heard of the guy.
Yeah.
But we have heard another gossip, another rumour that he will be leading an Italian team this season as the 12th team in the league, and I think that is super exciting because Jimmy's been involved with an Italian team in the Cup World for a while, but the amount of talent coming out of Italy is huge. With Jimmy as a CEO, I think a team from Italy could also do incredibly well.
They do have a touch of talent, and we have had a bit of a big up of the 49er world, which is where I come from. But of course, NACRA 17 world, there's he's all right.
He's all right. So I sailed the NACRA 17. It's a hydrofoiling catamaran that's in the Olympics, so a 17-foot version of the F50 with a bit less technology. And the Italian actually won the last 2 gold medals, Ruggero Tito, with his crew Caterina Banti. So very talented sailor, very good foiler. He does the foiling moth as well, so used to going fast, used to making fast decisions, and just has his inherent talent on a foiling boat. He can get so much out of it. He worked very closely with Jimmy during the America's Cup, wasn't on the actual America's Cup team in Luna Rossa, but was working with them over the past couple of years, so has formed that sort of relationship. I saw him around in Taranto last season, poking his head around, so I think he'd be pretty interested. And there's a couple to choose from. We don't know if Jimmy wants back on board. I don't think he will. I think he'll pass the baton over and form a really good team. And, there's other talent. They won the youth and the women's America's Cup, just goes to show. It's whether they go there or they bring another big signing in. Depends how much money they've got as well to poach other good sailors.
Well, that'd be the interesting thing, I suppose. Do you think, if we think of that Italian talent, and I'm thinking Giulia Conti she won the Women's America's Cup. Marco Gradoni, there you go, Marco, sorted you out of your name, mate. He won the Youth America's Cup, and of course was been sort of very prevalent in this new age of sailor in these high performance boats. So they've got the talent there, but as much as there is a lot of talent, there's not a lot of F50 experience. And, you'd know Jimmy better than me. I don't know how long his arms are relative to his pockets in terms of if he is the CEO and going to be trying to get these things going. But, it does appear like you've got to be willing to pay a bit of money if you want to get some of the best athletes on your team. And I wonder if that's what the Italian team or any new team, we're speculating it's an Italian team, of course, but whoever that new team is, are they going to need to come in with a landmark signing effectively and actually go out and spend some big money to get some big experience, be that Nathan Outridge, be that, I don't know who, but someone from another team, what do they do?
Yeah, I think what will be interesting to see is whether they could take a driver, an experienced driver. But, for me, I think the wing trimmer is somebody that is very much a link between a flight controller and a driver. And the reason I say that is a wing trimmer can really help a new driver find a mode or coach them into a direction that they want. The driver might be holding the wheel, but the wing trimmer essentially is pushing them in a certain direction. They can also talk to them a lot about what they're seeing, and then they can also help a new flight controller, because the balance between the foils and the wing they have to work together, and they can kind of cover each other's mistakes. So you've got to have one of those flight controller like an Andy or a wing trimmer with a really good experience to help cover any mistakes that you're essentially going to make as a new driver in an F50. And I think Jimmy's smart enough, he's been around the block long enough to know how to formulate a good team, and no doubt will be heavily involved from a coaching, from a sailing perspective as well. There's nothing stopping him jumping on the back of the boat and literally in the driver's ear or the wing trimmer's ear telling them what to do. So I'm really excited if the Italian team comes to fruition, because I think they will be really competitive, especially with the other teams that was spoken about this episode. I think they will rival, the teams that have been in this league for a season or two as well. So we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully we can check back in a couple of months' time and see who's on the start line.
Well, that's right. I mean, a lot of the teams have. We mentioned in a previous podcast that Instagram is fact, and we're back there again now. A lot of the teams have actually kind of put out team members on Instagram. They're taking this role, they're taking that role. Kind of feel like we need everyone to do that, so we know who might not be signed or might be or whatever. We need a bit of SailGP top trumps flying around so we can start to place these people and speculate. Because I agree, they need some people in. But one thing's for sure, if Jimmy Spittle's behind a team, whatever team it is, it's going to be well served and well lined up to be a real threat. I do think whoever it is going to come in with that real potential to sort of to rattle the cart, if you like.
Well, the great thing about sport is it's unpredictable, but we're going to have to rank the 5 teams that we've just spoken about of how we think they're going to play out this season. And I think that this could be the hardest one yet.
This is going to be so hard, yeah.
I'd say Italy would be up there for me. I think that, I forgot we had Germany as well, who I think will be really good. Germany, Italy.
USA, Switzerland.
Brazil. Oh, I'm going to be controversial here, I think. I'm going to go Germany, Italy, Brazil, Switzerland, USA. My order.
Copy that.
Don't hate me, everyone.
I like one. I
want you all to succeed.
Yeah. Well, we do, but the standard's going up and up and up, and that's
someone's
the thing.
got to come last.
I kind of, that is. Whoa. I don't think you're far off with that. I think that if it's an Italian team, I think there's so much foiling talent in there.
With experience backing them up.
Yeah, that I'd put them almost at the top of that pile.
We don't know who's on the roster, but
we don't know. But unless Jimmy's terrible at picking a team, if it is Jimmy, so that's on you, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
If that's the
his
case,
fault, not ours.
it's all on you, Jimmy. If we're wrong, your fault, son. But I think if he can probably do that, I think the Italian team. It feels a bit weird to speculate about a team we don't even know who's going to be there. We're really bigging them up.
So if we're right.
Yes, if we're right, yeah.
Then they'd be at the top of our ranking.
I think so, yeah. And then I think Germany's consistency. I think USA and Switzerland, I think that could be a coin toss. Mm-hmm. I'm going to put Brazil at the bottom, but I think out of that bottom 4 teams, so Germany, USA and Switzerland, I think the Brazilians will win the most races. I think their handicap will be inconsistency across the range there. So I feel like I've really sat on the fence trying to make everyone.
You basically put one team that we don't know and then 4 equals.
Yeah.
So,
Well, no, I put Germany. I definitely think Germany of that group are going to be the consistent team chipping up there. I think the interesting thing is if we looked at it as a whole, as like the 12, maybe we should try and
Don't make me do that. I'm going to need a whiteboard.
Okay, to work it out on that.
I mean, if we put all our
I'm going to go Spain at the top.
Interesting.
New Zealand.
Makes sense.
Australia.
Oh, you've changed from the first episode.
Yeah, because I've taught my way through all this. Great Britain. Then I'm going to go. I do still think then Denmark are going to be in there on that. Then Italy.
Wow.
Canada. This is the imaginary Italy team. Then Canada. Okay, now this is starting to get hard.
You've forgotten France isn't in there yet.
No, Canada, France, Germany, Switzerland, USA, Brazil.
I'm going to run out of teams as well.
Yeah, I mean that was actually really quite hard to do, remembering all the teams, and I don't want too much feedback from anyone online as to whether I actually even got all the teams, because 12's hard because I've only got 10 fingers.
I don't know. For me, as an Australian, it pains me to say, but I'm going to go New Zealand, Australia, which isn't that new.
It's not that painful.
France, GBR, Denmark, Canada.
Quite full from grace for the Spanish here.
Oh, I forgot about the Spanish. No, I need to redo it. No. Oh God, I've got to start again.
Come on, NLG.
Okay, seeing as I forgot the people that won this season and also just won a gold medal, I'm going to have to put them in the top 3 now so I don't forget them. Oh, it pains me because, okay. I can't do it.
I mean, is this not epic to actually see some raw emotion on the lady's face? I mean, she is struggling with this a bit. We need to hold a list up in front of her.
I just want
I don't know how this is
everyone
going
to
to
win.
look on. I don't know how this is going to look on camera, but like, I got all the teams' name. No, that's the events. Not gonna help you.
This is really difficult. So I usually have to do rankings before every event about who I think, and it's always the hardest part. But okay, I'm gonna go New Zealand, Australia. I'm gonna change again. GBR, Spain, France, Canada, Denmark, Italy, Germany, Brazil, Switzerland, USA.
You got 12.
I got
We'll
12. I
find
can't
out
remember
about
the order.
later.
It's hard because I honestly think probably the top 7 could be in the top 3. And I think that's what's making my decision so hard because...
Well, it also makes the whole season so exciting, doesn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, this is total speculation. We don't know what's going to happen and the teams...
We don't even know half the sailors on the teams.
Yeah.
We don't know all the movements. We've spoken about new foils. How is everyone going to react to the different foils, the new technology, the new events that we're going to? We don't know what the weather's going to bring as well. So anything can happen, and I think that's the great thing. It's unscripted, and it's so good to watch. And I think I have the best seat in the house. You might have the second best.
I don't know. Not sure if it's the second best seat in the house. It's definitely a seat, and it's an absolute privilege to get to talk about it and see it all there live and be involved with. But yeah, I just think looking ahead, it is just so exciting to see what's happening. You know, the whole standard last season went up an awful lot. It's going to go up again. It's really sad for Phil and Nathan that we're not going to see them on the start line, but I do think having 2 absolute OGs of SailGP sat there in the background. Dylan Fletcher as well. He was so good in season 1, just done so well, of course, in the summer with Ineos Britannia. And I think, you know, we've got big names like that not on boats. Man, that doesn't have put a bit of pressure on the 12 drivers in the hot seat, doesn't it?
Pressure is on, and I think pressure is on for the drivers. Pressure is on in between teams. People want to steal good sailors. The value's going up. The excitement is there. And that's it for the Season 5 preview for us. We're going to have to wrap this up, but we do want to know from you. I mean, you saw how hard it was for me to rank the 12, so please let us know what your favourite event is, who you think the order is going to be for the top 12, like from 1 to 12. It's been so great to chat all things SailGP again, and I can't wait for the season to kick off.
Thanks very much for joining us. Make sure you follow us on the socials. Click the notifications on your podcast so you keep listening to us as the season goes on. Stay with us for the action online, and we can't wait to give you a real show this season.
Racing will kick off on the 23rd of November for the Emirates Dubai Sail Grand Prix. We will see you there.